particular story, the reporting came from reading a piece on Slate.com, probably while standing in line at Starbucks. Slate alleged that the Trump campaign was coordinating with a Russian bank called Alpha Bank, using a hidden server in Trump Tower. How did Slate.com know this? By consulting a, quote, small, tightly knit community of computer scientists. These scientists, Slate insisted, were totally nonpartisan. One of the sources explained anonymously, quote, "We wanted to defend both campaigns because we wanted to preserve the integrity of the election." So here you have just another unnamed computer scientist defending election integrity. Makes sense. Don't ask questions. Jake Sullivan did not ask questions. Jake Sullivan takes Slate.com very seriously. At the time, Jake Sullivan was working for the Hillary Clinton campaign. He cited the Slate story as evidence that Trump was indeed colluding with Vladimir Putin. Quote, "The secret hotline may be the key to unlocking the mystery of Trump's ties to Russia," Sullivan said. What a tool. "We can only assume that federal authorities will now explore this direct connection between Trump and Russia. So there was a bat phone in Trump Tower that rang directly in the Kremlin." Jake Sullivan stuck to that line for months. Here he is on CNN in March of 2017.
What we learned during the campaign was that very serious computer science experts, people who work closely with the United States government, had uncovered this secret hotline between the Alpha Bank, the Russian bank, and the Trump organization. Now, of course, we didn't know for sure if in fact that were the case, but we knew that it should be investigated. And we knew that given how serious these computer scientists were, they weren't just making up crackpot theories. So it wasn't surprising to learn that even as of last week, the FBI is still looking into this.
And do you have any idea what they're looking for?
I don't. Of course, I don't have a line into the FBI on this, but what I know based on public reporting is that there is very unusual server activity between this Russian bank and the Trump organization, which suggests contact that took place over the course of the campaign.
Oh, the secret hotline. These people are literally willing to say anything if it gives them power. But listen carefully to what Jake Sullivan said. "I don't have a line into the FBI on this. Everything I know is from public reporting." So you'll notice that Sullivan went out of his way to say that, which should have been a very clear sign that it was a lie. And indeed, it was a lie. In fact, the Hillary Clinton for President campaign was coordinating directly with the FBI. A Clinton lawyer called Michael Sussman had been feeding false claims about Trump and Russia, once again from that crack team of nonpartisan computer scientists, to the general counsel at the FBI, a man called James Baker. But Sussman didn't stop there. In February of 2017, after the election, Sussman also met with the general counsel at CIA. So at this point, you may be wondering about the identity of those nonpartisan computer scientists who dug up all this new information about Donald Trump's direct connection to Vladimir Putin. Who are these people? Well, you may not be shocked to learn they weren't nonpartisan. Once again, Jake Sullivan was lying to us. In fact, a pro-Hillary Clinton activist from South Africa called Rodney Joffe had put together a team of digital researchers. Oppo guys, we used to call them. Most of them came from Georgia Tech. In emails, Rodney Joffe explained why he was doing this. He wanted Hillary to win the presidency because Hillary Clinton had promised him a job as a top cybersecurity officer in the U.S. government. So Joffe wanted to help Hillary win. He said that. In order to do that, he gave his nonpartisan computer scientists a mission. Their job was to gather data they had access to thanks to a Pentagon contract in order to connect Donald Trump to Putin. Now, we know all this thanks to a new court filing from special counsel John Durham, who spent the last few years investigating the origins of the Russia hoax and is finally producing some material. In the words of Durham's filing, quote, "Joffe tasked those researchers to mine internet data to establish an inference and a narrative tying then-candidate Trump to Russia." So this wasn't reporting, of course. They had a goal. They were trying to get Hillary elected president. The amazing thing is how they did it, where their data came from. The filing says that Joffe and his computer scientists intercepted internet traffic, that is, emails and presumably text messages, from, quote, Trump Tower, Donald Trump's Central Park West apartment building, and the executive office of the President of the United States. In other words, Trump was right. This isn't a conspiracy theory. His claims were true. Democrats were spying on Donald Trump, not just as a candidate, but as president of the United States in the White House, as well as in his own home. So has anything like this ever happened in American history? Not that we know of, But Jeff Bezos doesn't think you should worry about it or even know that it happened. Today's Washington Post informed its brain-dead readership that while, quote, Trump is once again claiming that he was spied upon, that claim has been, quote, debunked. Oh, really? How has it been debunked? Shut up, it just has. But in fact, that claim has not been debunked. It has been verified. That claim is true. It actually happened. And the way it happened tells you everything about why it has been so extraordinarily difficult to bring democracy back to the United States. A government contractor spied on a populist presidential candidate, then passed the information to his opponent's campaign, which gave it to the FBI and the news media, which distorted it to create the illusion of treason, which was then cited by the politician who paid for the whole thing as a reason not to vote for the guy she spied on. Got it? It's a closed loop. Everyone's got a role. Here's Hillary Clinton during the presidential debates.
Putin, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race.
So if you're not all in with NATO, if you think it's a pointless boondoggle that endangers the United States, you, my friend, work for Vladimir Putin. You encouraged espionage, shrieked Hillary, at the very moment she was doing precisely that. They always denounce you for their own sins. But she said Russia has engaged in cyber attacks on the United States, and that's probably true, in point of fact. But she was speaking about a specific, quote, cyber attack. She was talking about the Russians hacking the servers at the DNC. Democrats wasted 3 years of our lives telling us that at ever-increasing volume. Here's the interesting thing. It was not true. It has never been true. Vladimir Putin did not hack the DNC. There was never any evidence that the Russians hacked the DNC. Instead, the DNC emails were very clearly stolen from within the building, most likely by a Bernie Sanders supporter who wanted to show the world how Bernie Sanders was being shafted by the very same corrupt forces in Washington that later shafted Donald Trump. That was very obvious to anyone who was paying attention at the time. What's interesting is that no one's been punished for it. Likely no one ever will be. In fact, Jake Sullivan, the guy you just saw lying about those nonpartisan computer scientists, has not been indicted for what he did. Jake Sullivan has been promoted. Jake Sullivan is now Joe Biden's national security advisor. He's still screaming about Russia, only this time it's not to bring down a Republican opponent in a presidential race. He's screaming about Russia to bring the entire country to war with a nuclear-armed power. So this story has not gone away. Lee Smith has watched it unfold now for more than 5 years. He's the author of the terrific book, The Plot Against the President. He joins us tonight. Lee Smith, thanks so much for coming on. So we're hesitant to take up the story partly because it seemed on the surface so complicated, but when you dig in a little bit, it's not so complicated. They were spying on Trump as a candidate and as the president of the United States from the White House. Why is this not the biggest story of the year?
Right. It's an enormous national security scandal. I hear people comparing it to Watergate, and it does not compare to Watergate at all. What we're talking about when we talk about the executive office of the president, this is some of the most secure communications that we have in the United States. And the fact that these were being tapped, the idea that these were under surveillance. We know certainly the DNS systems, and it may be more data as well. We don't know that yet. But the idea that the Oval Office and other important offices in the White House were under surveillance by political operatives is extraordinary. It's shocking. And I'm talking to people who were investigating this on the Hill for several years, and they're shocked.
Well, because I think you described it precisely right. It's more than a political story, it's a national security story. And the irony here is Hillary Clinton shrieks about hacking servers and Russia spying on the DNC when people acting on her behalf are literally spying on the president of the United States in the White House. So, if she can do it, why can't everyone do it? Honestly.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an enormous issue, actually, because again, all we know so far is that they had access to this data. Did bad foreign actors have access to this data as well? Did they know what was going on? Because again, this is a target of every intelligence service around the world and has been since there's been a White House. So again, that's extraordinary. And the idea that Hillary Clinton, that we've been living in the psyche of this deranged and depraved harridan for 5 years. And now we understand even more the scope and depravity of this operation. It's terrible for the country.
Well, you know, it really is. And by the way, if Trump's name wasn't in this story, I think people would feel free to admit it. I don't care whose name is. If they were doing this, they were doing this to the current president, whom I despise. I would still think it was a terrible thing, because it is. Lee Smith, I appreciate it. Thank you for all the work you've done on this.
Thank you, Tucker.